Greetings, classmates. Thanks for spending the next few minutes with me as we walk through my change and innovation plan. I titled my plan, This Meeting Could Have Been an Email, an Assessment Newsletter. The idea for my plan actually came while I was in a budget manager meeting. I've been a budget manager for 8 years now, and this process stresses me out every year. We have this one meeting to kick things off and then are sent off to create budgets. Every fall, it catches me by surprise, and every fall, it fills me with stress and confusion. It overwhelms me, and honestly, it makes me feel a little stupid. In this year's meeting, I had a light bulb moment. Those same words I was using to describe the budget process and how it makes me feel are exactly what many faculty and staff have said to me about assessment and how it makes them feel. Each fall, as a part of the assessment or institutional effectiveness process, all academic programs and administrative units at my institution measure student learning and administrative outcomes. The process is an accreditation requirement, but it's also a really valuable process. It documents some of the great things our faculty are doing, and it gives us the opportunity to ask questions about student learning and make sure that students are learning what we think they are and what we hope they are. As you can imagine, there are a lot of feelings about this process. Some people view it as a helpful process, others as a complete waste of their time. I've wanted to better help faculty and staff with assessment for a few years now, but I don't want to take more of their time. Because of that, assessment is very focused on the months of August, September, and October, which is when assessment reports and plans are written and reviewed. I haven't been able to figure out how to provide more instruction and guidance without taking more of the faculty and staff time. There are a lot of faculty and staff members on campus who need this information. For this current academic year, there were about 100 faculty and staff who wrote assessment documents, and then there were 28 who served as reviewers on my assessment committees. So like I mentioned, the struggle is figuring out how to integrate assessment into the academic year without it being a burden. Additionally, in higher education, everyone's schedules are so different, so it makes it difficult to schedule a meeting. Campus-wide professional development normally takes place at the beginning of each semester, but it is almost impossible to get on that schedule. I want to figure out how to convey the needed information to faculty and staff without being a burden. So my solution to this problem is a quarterly assessment newsletter. This will allow me to show videos I have made, videos from YouTube that others have made, and to highlight voices other than my own, and to hopefully also include some interactive elements. Some of the reading that we've done this semester, or this last 8 weeks, has really stuck out to me and when thinking through this change. In the first book that we read about school leaders and the change that they've implemented on their campus, it really stuck out to me how the common theme was that faculty and staff have to be given time when you want them to learn something new. We can't just expect them to implement this change that we want from them. And then from our most recent book, it's the idea that professional development should be embedded, ongoing, and responsive. And also that what we're doing, any change we implement, cannot just be about technology. It also has to be about the people. This has been a problem for me. In my meetings and training sessions, I have really had to focus on technology and the software that we use. And I'd really like to spend more time on assessment and how to do assessment well, and then let technology just kind of come alongside of us and support that process. I think that this newsletter will really benefit a lot of people groups on campus. I think faculty and staff will find it really helpful. I think communicating this information throughout the year will result in less missing data for their assessment documents, a more meaningful assessment experience, and then hopefully in the fall when they sit down to write their assessment reports and plans, they're not having to start from scratch. They're not having to remember all of the assessment knowledge. Because we've been talking about it, because there have been regular reminders, I'm hoping that it makes it just less stressful for them. But I also think I'm going to see some benefits from this. Since I'm in charge of assessment, and assessment is an accreditation process, it is my job to make sure that we have high quality assessment documents. And so I'm hopeful that by getting better content information to faculty and staff, that it'll also result in higher quality assessment documents. I'm also excited for the opportunity to connect with faculty and staff throughout the academic year. I feel like I see everyone for 3 months and then I'm kind of stuck in my office and they're in their classrooms. And so I'm hopeful that the newsletter provides an opportunity to connect with faculty and staff in maybe some different ways. My plan is to send the newsletter quarterly. The first one I want to send in January. This is a good opportunity to offer some spring semester reminders, some reminders of, hey, you might want to take a look at your assessment plan and remind yourself what you're supposed to assess in the spring. Can also go over some dates that hit at the beginning of the semester for people who struggled with assessment earlier in the fall. Then April is a good chance to touch base before the academic year ends. Can also offer some reminders about the approaching general education assessment deadline. There's also a deadline where we assess the vision of the institution, some reminders for them to go gather their spring data, especially from their adjuncts, that they can load data in the spring. They don't have to wait for the fall. But then also a good chance for me to see if there's anyone who wants to serve as a reviewer in the next academic year. The August newsletter will be a big one. Since August is when we kick off the assessment process, this will be a good chance to remind departments that it's important for them to talk about assessment in their department meetings. Go ahead and communicate the assessment dates they need to know for that semester and to let them know who the reviewers are that academic year. And then November's newsletter will be a chance to kind of wrap up the assessment process, to offer some thank yous to writers and reviewers, to highlight what worked and what didn't work. And then in the future, I would like to move the assessment survey to the November newsletter. You'll see in a little bit that this year it will be in January. But in the future, I'd like to do it in November when the assessment process is still fresh on their minds. When it comes to the characteristics of innovation and how quickly my change will be adopted, I think I'm going to find myself set up for success because of the simplicity of this change. I'm not really asking for people to do anything other than interact with an email on their own time. Additionally, I think this newsletter will be a good resource for them to look back on when they are sitting down to write their assessment documents. That's just an additional resource that will help them. I don't think faculty and staff are going to see how helpful this newsletter is until the upcoming fall, until the seeds have been planted and they start the fall semester, not with a blank slate, but with some good assessment knowledge. So the relative advantage and the observability, I really don't think that's going to happen until the fall. The trialability, I think this will be really simple, that after each email and each newsletter, I'll be able to make adjustments for future newsletters. The conditions for change, I want to walk through 6 of these real quickly that are very present or need a little bit of work when it comes to my newsletter. Dissatisfaction is status quo. This is primarily me. I'm not satisfied. And I also think faculty and staff probably aren't because they're frustrated. So it's that balance of me trying to make this process as easy for them while also trying to make it as meaningful. I think the newsletter is really going to help make it a more meaningful process. Knowledge and skills available. In the video we watched, it talked about getting the knowledge to the people who need to make the change. I think this is the exact issue that my change is addressing. Resources available. I don't really need any resources. I just need access to my institution's newsletter system, which I should easily be able to get via an IT ticket submission. Time available, again, it's mainly my time. And since this is a priority for me, it's something that I'm very willing to do. One of the things I'm excited for is the rewards or incentives for participants. I plan to end each newsletter with something like the first 3 people to email me the answer to this question will receive a gift card to the coffee shop on campus. I think that'll be a good motivation. Participation, faculty and staff on our campus know that assessment is mandatory. They don't often do it with a happy heart, but there is already an experience on campus where they know that assessment is important. And so I'm hopeful that an assessment newsletter is something that will be read. My communication plan is pretty simple. I mentioned that in the future, I'm going to do my assessment survey in November, but moving forward, or this year, I'll do it in January. They're used to doing an assessment survey. I implemented it last year, and so I think by including it in the first newsletter, that will help kick things off well. My 3 biggest challenges are, 1, getting access to the email system. It's just an IT ticket, but sometimes that can be a little cumbersome. And so I plan to do that when I return from Christmas break. Second is creating the media needed for content. I'm excited to use my new skills from Canva as well as some of the resources that I gathered in an additional course that I've been taking. So I don't think I'm starting from scratch, but that is going to just be, that is going to take a little bit of time. And then getting people to read the email. So I plan to, like I said, include incentives, and then I probably will reach out to deans and department chairs and ask them to mention the newsletter in their college and school meetings. The results of this launch of a newsletter, I think it's going to bring out less stress during the assessment season. I think faculty and staff are going to have better content knowledge. And I think the software we use, which is called Zytrax, I think it will be less confusing to faculty and staff. As they have a better understanding of what's needed in assessment, I think where to put the information in Zytrax will become more intuitive to them. And then really there's 2 ways that I'll know if I've achieved success. Observationally, faculty and staff tend to be very open and honest with me about their thoughts on assessment. And so I'm hopeful to hear from them. And I probably will ask a few people for feedback on a newsletter in just a really casual way. But then I think I can also get some quantitative results. In the spring of 23, I can add questions to my assessment survey about the newsletter and how helpful it's been and if there's any way that I can make it even more helpful. So thanks for listening along. I'm really excited about my plan, and I'm looking forward to your feedback and any suggestions you might have.